Good morning, friends. Good morning to all our viewers. We're happy that you're joining us for this episode 9 of Health and Family Life Education, the Parenting Edition. We weren't on last week, but we're back here this week. And with us again, we have Mrs. Alicia Hoyt, clinical psychologist. Alicia, welcome.
Thank you, Trish. Morning, everybody.
Good. So this morning, we are journeying with, the situation that happened in Barbados with the pretest, the survey, and we're going to go into that shortly. But before we go there, we have an image on the screen, well, a little video from Instagram, James Brunt. And in going through, you all know that I like James Brunt by now, this artist from Yorkshire. And when I saw this piece of art, remembering that he uses things that that we can throw away, natural objects that we can throw away. And when I saw this video, it really reminded me of our topic that we will go through, we will journey with today. These stones, all different sizes, it seems as if we're on a slippery slope as parents. But we're not alone, they're balancing, the different sizes of stones are balancing each other. Depending on how you look at the imagery, you could feel as if, you're going to fall off at any time, but we need the support of each other, and how can we as parents, as adults, support each other on this parenting journey? There are different sizes, there are different colors. And, it's all about us working together, that we're not alone. As a body, we can, do what God asks of us with his grace. And, it's by the seaside, so there's that level of calmness and so on. So this image really reminds me of where we are at this time in history, and the difference that we can make if we keep a positive and calm attitude, trusting in God's grace.
I like it, Trisha. I really do. Gives me new things to do when I go to the beach too. You mentioned something about these are ordinary objects that we might throw away, and I think it speaks beautifully to parenting. I think many of us as parents, we dismiss the ordinary moments of life, the ordinary things that we do as being, unimportant. But what I see is look at the beauty that you build out of those ordinary moments, those ordinary interactions. Look at the level of beauty and creativity that can come out of it. And that we as parents have more power than we know, and more influence than we know in those moments of life. And also, it takes a steady hand to put those rocks together. I don't know if I have that kind of patience or if my hands are that steady, but you'd have to be a very calm, steady handed person to build something out of just these ordinary moments and these ordinary objects. And that's what we're called to do as parents. We're called to, as far as possible, to be a steady, calm hand in our family life, and to build and to create and to believe that something beautiful can come out of all that we're putting into our lives and into our children's lives. So it's patience and confidence and calm that is asked of us. Lovely.
Thank you for that reflection, Alicia. So as we jump into today's segment, we're on episode 9, and today we'll be discussing the pretest, the survey distributed in Barbados, and how it can have an impact on family life and parenting. Now, just as we wait for persons to come in, we're on the first 5 minutes, we're just waiting for persons to come into the live. And remember to please share and like and comment. In the last 2 weeks, a lot has been happening, Alicia, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, yeah. There's been a lot of going on.
A lot has been going on. But we are happy that you are still joining with us. Now, just as we recap, the last time that we were here, we started talking about the adolescence, and that being the time, the vocational years.
Yes.
Being the time of building structure. It's a time in life when we solidify our identities. We address hard questions about the kind of people we want to be. What kind of person I want to be? The kind of work we would like to do, our vocation, the beliefs, what are our beliefs and why? The groups with which we want to associate with, and the kind of people with whom we wish to be most closely involved. You know, that's the adolescent years that parents are
Yes.
helping their teens to maneuver. And adding to that challenge of seeing how all this relates to one's blossoming sexuality. And you can begin to get a picture of why adolescence is such a tumultuous time. You know, it's really because there's so many big things coming together, you know, and, you know, it could make it a challenging time, but in challenge, there's always beauty. I can
Yep.
see you want to share something, Alicia. I can see it. You know, I can see you jumping off your chair to share
No,
something.
I'm agreeing with you, and really the image, we keep having these images of the parent as a secure base or as a container that holds all these changes that are taking place for our children. We get sold this misconception that as they turn teenage years, they don't need their parents again. They only want their friends. We have no place in their lives, and it's just not true. Our teenagers need us, but they just need us in a different way. They need us to be their stability, to be their sanctuary, to be the container in which all these ups and downs can happen, all these emotional upheavals, these romances, all these things that are going on. We have to be a place where they can come and exhale and be themselves. And we have to be that forebrain for them too, sometimes asking questions that guides them to think about who they want to be and how they want to act in the particular situation. So we're very necessary. Just we're not tying their shoes and brushing their teeth anymore, but we're holding space for them.
Good. I'm glad that you said that. Um, so as we move, you know, we transition nicely into our topic for today.
Mm.
A slippery slope, but we here balancing, we keeping a calm mind and you know being patient. Last week, and I'll just share my screen. As I share my screen, you know, news broke that a questionnaire sanctioned by the Ministry of Education in Barbados and overseen by the Inter-American Development Bank, the IDB, was administered to mostly 11-year-olds in Barbados. It has also come to light that a similar project was undertaken in Jamaica and Belize. There are some question marks around that. Misleadingly labeled as the computer science diagnostic pretest. It included questions on social and emotional health that were of a very sensitive nature. And that is taken from the Ministry of Education IDB questionnaire fiasco, an article that came out in the Barbados Today, the legal and human rights, the privacy angle. And then yesterday, the 11th, the Ministry of Education, Culture, Science, and Technology is aware of the concerns that have been raised in Barbados in regard to the pretest survey that was used for the Code Caribbean project. So that project, that Code Caribbean project, so this is in Belize now. This project is a positive youth development program which seeks to provide technical skills in coding and entrepreneurial and life skills, such as collaboration, teamwork, and conflict resolution. So some students in 5 participating schools in Belize, it was also 5 participating schools in Barbados based on what I've heard, were asked all the questions on the survey. Students in the remaining schools did not answer the questions in one section of the survey, and this is in Belize. While the questions are deemed to be a measure of mental health and well-being, this ministry, meaning the Ministry of Education, Culture, Science, and Technology, shares the concern of the public regarding the nature of the questions, which has been removed in Belize. The ministry hereby assures the public that the practice of seeking parental consent will continue to be observed. Now, there's a lot being shared there. I just want to take us to the questions before I ask you, Alicia, to jump in. Now, based on an article from Breaking Belize News, below is a sampling of the more than 150 psychosocial questions. And at the right of my screen, you would see what is it said that the questionnaire looked like, and you would see highlighted in yellow some of the questions were, I drink alcohol without my parents' consent. Now let's remember that this questionnaire was given to Form 1 students in Barbados. I'm not sure what the age was in Belize, but it was based on the reports, it's children between the ages of 11 and 15 years that received this, participated in this survey, pretest. And number 73, I deliberately try to hurt or kill myself. Number 146, I think about killing myself. Number 151, I think about sex too much. And number 165, I wish I were of the opposite sex, among many other questions that parents did not know about prior to this exercise being done in the school. At this time, Alicia, I want to ask you to jump in here in terms of the fact that parents were not advised before, what and the particular age group that is involved in this pretest survey. What are your comments? Thank you.
Well, it's deeply troubling that questionnaires like this would have been given out to young children without parental consent. That's not a way of doing things that I'm familiar with at all. In my practice, where I do educational assessments and psychoeducational assessments, you may have a psychosocial questionnaire like that. But for that to be administered to any child, it's because the parent has agreed, I'm bringing my child for this evaluative service. I understand that my child will be asked things like this. I understand that my child's information will be kept confidential. I will be given the results of the testing. We will discuss it. I am assured that it's for my child's well-being. So it's a whole context with the parent within which something like this would be done. And so to have had a question like this, the questions to a parent who is unaware, who hasn't agreed to this, didn't know what was happening, feels really, really sinister. And so to do that in a context of a school setting, imagine this is a Form 1 student, so we go in 11 to 14 years, who is in a new school setting, so Form 1, Form 2. This is a child in a school setting who's going to more or less comply with what is asked of them. Yeah, there is an intrinsic trust that the adults around me, my parent has sent me to this school, these are my teachers and adults, they are asking of me things that are for my best interest. I also want to do what my peers are doing because that's the age I'm at. So I'm going to comply with what's asked of me. And this is why parental consent is necessary, because a child is vulnerable. A child is trusting. They will do what is asked of them. Even if the questions make them uncomfortable or they're uncertain, they'll follow through with it. The child who already has a relationship with their parent will go home and say, Mommy, well, they asked us about this and I thought it was weird. But this is why parental consent is necessary, because a child is vulnerable. And then to wonder where the information is going. They had to put their names, addresses, and a lot of personal information. Where is it going? What's it being used for? What's the outcome of the survey? That would be profoundly unnerving for a parent. And it's wrong. It should not have happened, in my personal and professional opinion. You don't do that with young children or without parental consent.
Thank you for sharing that, Alicia. I think that was the uproar. As I continue to share my screen, I remember one parent saying, I'm trying to pull it up. One parent just saying, I didn't know about it until my daughter got home. But I honestly think that some person needs to be held accountable for this. These are 11-year-old students, and some of these questions, in my opinion, planted seeds in their heads. Do you think a child is thinking what gender they want to be? Asking children questions like if they think about sex often, and if they take illegal drugs without their parents knowing, all of that was distasteful. But my main issue with it is that it was disguised under the name computer science test. The one thing the ministry is supposed to do with the hours the children are at school is to protect them emotionally and mentally. This is unethical. And this was the response of a parent in Barbados, to the question when her child came home to her. Would you like to add anything there, Alicia?
Well, again, it is unfortunate that it would have been the sense of subterfuge is there. It can't be denied. How did this come under a pretest for computer science? So it's unfortunate. That's the word I would use. Um, and we can get portrayed as parents as wanting to hide our children away from things and not have them thinking about certain things. And it's not the issue that we should want to hide our children away, but we want to be responsible for when and how they are engaged in certain conversations or discussing certain issues. And that's all right, to understand when and how conversations around very personal issues for our children are taking place. So, with that right as a parent to give consent comes a responsibility that we as parents are now being probably forced to take up. Maybe we didn't take it up to the extent that we needed to, where we educate our children around sex and sexuality, around identity. Maybe we need to be doing it more than we have been and take up our responsibility as parents. But if there's a concern that we have to go around parents to do things because parents are not doing their part, then support parents more in being able to do their part. Don't sideline them.
I couldn't
And that's
agree
what this
more.
felt like. Yeah, that's what it felt like.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. You know, it reminded me of this article that His Grace, because a friend asked me, Trisha, do you think this is happening in Trinidad? Well, it jolted me. It reminded me of an article that His Grace had written. I think it was in August, and I want to pull it up because I think it's important to share. And, you know, it's dated, I think, the 14th of August, 2022. And here it talks about, and I'll just read snippets of it. A global movement is spending a lot of money in Trinidad and Tobago around the issue of gender and identity. And based on some of what we saw in terms of the questions, you know, it reminded me of that. I jump over on this side here. I hope you're seeing my screen, and I hope we put this article in the chat so that you'll be able to access it. In this part here, it talks about what is interesting is that the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, Article 5 states, parties shall respect the responsibilities, rights, and duties of parents to provide in a manner consistent with the evolving capacities of the child, appropriate direction and guidance in the exercise by the child of the rights recognized in the present convention. And then it goes on to talk, and you shared about it there. You said all rights have corresponding responsibilities. Yes. There's a reason why nations identify an age under which the child is considered a minor. It is because the child has not yet reached the level of maturity to hold the responsibilities that are associated with the rights. And I think that's what you were trying to say there just now, Alicia, wasn't it?
Yeah. Our children they have rights and they have to be protected, but somebody has to be looking after them and looking along with them. Somebody has to have their best interest at heart. And so we have a responsibility as parents to guide their education and to guide their development. And that's just what it is.
Right. Thank you for that. Now, if we go later down in the article, it talks about later down here, it talks about, so we talked about the rights of the parents. There's a growing push under state control. There's a growing push for state control over education and formation of our children. This is a very dangerous movement. And he goes there to talk about Stalin in Russia and Hitler in Germany and Mao in China. But then lower down, it talks about in a liberal democracy like Trinidad and Tobago, there are three main actors in the education of children: the state, the family, and the religious institutions. Now, here we're talking about the parental rights. You know, what is the rights, what rights parents have and responsibilities, but now we're shifting it now to parents' rights, the church, and the state in terms of education. And maybe you can read for us there, Alicia, the Catechism of the Catholic Church states.
The Catechism of the Catholic Church states that parents have the first responsibility for the education of their children. They bear witness to this responsibility first by creating a home where tenderness, forgiveness, respect, fidelity, and disinterested service are the rule. The home is well suited for education in the virtues. This requires an apprenticeship in self denial, sound judgment, and self mastery, the preconditions of all true freedom. Parents should teach their children to subordinate the material and instinctual dimensions to interior and spiritual ones.
Right. So, the catechism is very clear there. Well, in terms of what parents should be doing and so on. And it goes, the Catholic position is that the parent has its responsibility to educate their children in a manner consistent to their values, their religion, and their outlook in life. And it shares a little bit more. It says the church, so we're moving from parents and we're going to the church now. The church has a responsibility to assist parents, to support parents by providing a space for their children to be educated in a Catholic perspective. So the church's responsibility is to work with parents,
Yes.
and being mindful that a lot of parents may not have that kind of support. And maybe you want to share a little bit more there, Alicia.
All right. So many of us as parents, honestly, may have dropped the ball in terms of raising our children in a space of tenderness, forgiveness, respect, fidelity, and so on. And so we as parents have a lot of work to do. Maybe the church hasn't always been really very clear in what are the teachings are and to teaching the truth about sex and sexuality and development of the human person. And so we have work to do. The answer isn't to abandon the cause and to go around these institutions, but to support and to continue to work together to secure parents. And many of us weren't educated on these areas, and Trish, growing up in our own homes. Sex wasn't talked about since sex education is one of the areas we're dealing with. It wasn't talked about. Many of us suffered our own abuses and neglect. And so we didn't feel empowered or equipped or knowledgeable enough. And so we have work to do in picking up our responsibility. We need the help and the support and the education, and that's part of what we're doing here so that we can take up our responsibility. The answer is not to go around the parent. Yeah.
I'm happy. This is the second time you said that. The answer is not to go around the parent, to equip, to empower, to educate the parent. And
Yeah.
as you said, is what we are trying to do here. But let's go back to that third point. So the parent has a responsibility, the church has a responsibility, and the state has a responsibility to ensure that every child receives a high quality of education, and the three must work
Let's work
together
together.
for the good of every child. And I think that's important, to say that, it's all about assisting the parent, working with the parent, keeping the parent in the loop. I don't know if you want to add anything there, Alicia, if we have a
You,
comment on Facebook.
we've always known that the family unit is the microcosm of society. We know that. People come from homes. It mightn't be two parents, it might be grandparent, it might be an auntie, it might be an extended household, but anyhow you spin it, children come from homes, and that is where we get our citizens. So as the family goes, so the society goes. And it's always been known that you work to support and to strengthen the family unit, right? The home is best suited for education on values and virtues and morals. Just like we saw with those pebbles and those stones making that beautiful picture. It's the moments of the day. It's doing chores. It's how we manage homework. It's the child's involvement in youth, community, and team sports that helps to build character. It's the mistakes that a child makes and how we correct them, how we engage with them, how we encourage them, how we have them discover who they are in the moments of the day, over the months, over the years, is how you build a whole child. That is the work of the home and the family. And if we're finding that homes and families are not doing it well, then we have to support homes and families more, not cut them out. Families have to get wider support. It's so, research shows that all it takes is one person to stand with a teenager to help that young person go on the right path or turn their lives around. It could be a coach, an aunt, a priest or a pastor once you've vetted them. It could be any adult who supports and believes in your child, if that's the kind of support that you need. A community police officer, a teacher, yeah, who supports your child in becoming their best self. So if you're feeling like you don't have people in your life, or if the parents are absent or failing or on drugs or having real difficulty, it takes one adult to help a child get on the right track and stay on the right track, to believe in them. And so we must continue to support the family unit in educating and guiding our children. We can't bypass that.
Thank you. And on Facebook, we have a comment
Mhm.
from Dominique that says, as a parent of a child with special needs who is about to enter puberty, I'm always concerned about what messages he receives from the outside world about sexuality, because I know things will confuse him. To think that a school can expose children to certain themes without parental consent is deeply concerning. Thank you, Dominique, for that comment that you shared there. And there's so many things that Dominique shared there that is important.
Yeah.
This she trusting the school
Yes.
to provide a certain kind of information, and knowing that it doesn't happen is a rare disappointment, to say the least. I don't know if you want to share any um, message of hope to Dominique there, as she shared that, gave us that comment.
Um, we really have to pick up the slack. The parents are citizens of a country. We are the voters, right? We are the people who make up the nation. And so we have to pick up the slack and take up our part. We are living in a world that has very different views and values. Maybe that was always the case, but maybe we had an assumption of a Christian environment or a Christian society. We have to accept that things are changing. And so we have to really work at giving our children a clear, strong message about what we know to be the truth about their bodies, about what their bodies are for, about the fact that they're created for love and created by love. So we, as the adults in the home, have to really distill what is the truth, what do we believe, and convey it to our children in the 100 different ways that we have across a day, so that when they do hear something contrary outside, they can contrast it with what they've been taught. And we've created an atmosphere where they can come and dialogue with us, and we can talk through what they're hearing and thinking and feeling, and continue to guide their journey. We can't hide our children away anymore. The school system isn't always what we expect it to be. We have to speak up to that and demand better, definitely. But we have to then give our children a message at home that they can um, hear, in contrast to what they may be hearing beyond our home.
Alicia, as you shared there, you talked about the truth at home, but many times the truth, what is the truth, and that could be a whole other discussion.
Yeah,
Sometimes many
yeah.
parents don't know what the truth is what is coming to us on Netflix, on social media, on the television, on the radio. Is that the truth? So there's also that concern as to who provides the truth
Yeah,
to parents first, so that they can then
yeah,
provide that truth to
yeah.
their children. So that's a conversation I think we really need
Mhm,
to, continue to work on, in terms of empowering and educating our
mhm.
parents. Now, I see we have been on for the past 35 minutes. Um,
Wow,
we're, we're,
Trisha.
we're we're drawing near to the end, and we didn't really continue so much with the adolescents, continuing with that
No.
aspect today, but we will continue. I think this is an important discussion that we need
Mhm,
to have. On that article that I shared from His Grace, there was a petition to the bottom of that article. And, it talks about parental consent, in recapping that article and pulling out the key message, which was their international forces pushing us to their values. As a sovereign nation, we need to have an open conversation about what values we want to accept in Trinidad. And you share that very nicely there. What do we really want?
mhm.
So it's important, an action step. I don't know, maybe some people may not have read up about the comprehensive sex education. And if you agree, if it will be good for your child or grandchild, if you think it will be harmful, sign the petition. And the petition really focuses on, parental consent and the parents' option to opt out if they choose not to agree with what
Mm.
the school, the education system may be pushing their way. And this is the beginning of a wider conversation, which we
Yeah.
will be having, we will continue to have later on. So as we get ready to wrap up today's session, Alicia, what would you say are some of the key things that you want to say to parents, you want to bring out of today's conversation in light of what has been shared about Barbados and Belize and our own
Um,
context?
yeah, I'm trying to think of it in a nutshell. We as adults, we're exhausted. As adults, we're exhausted. Life is full, life is busy, very stressful, things are changing, and we have these children to raise. We don't know what the world is going to be like when they get older. And so we get a little overwhelmed as to what to do and how to do it. And I really want to encourage parents. The James Brunt artistry is really beautiful. Those stones piled together. We're going to have to slow down. We're going to have to sit as adults and reevaluate what's important, what we want for ourselves and for our children and for our lives. We're taken up with economic concerns and hardships. We're taken up with how to pay the bills. We're taken up with getting them through their education and everything else that is just in our face. But we may have to stop and reevaluate who we are. What is our spirituality? What is our belief? From whence cometh our help? And as we realign ourselves with our faith, which is an important part, which is the essential part of what we are, because we're eternal beings, as we stop to reevaluate our faith, then we can move to guide our children and to guide our homes. We're really going to need to sober up, um, and clarify for ourselves, what am I about and what am I doing for my children? And with that, we can find the help that we need to get on the right track.
Thank you for sharing that. It reminded me that as parents, we are not parenting alone. God is our co-parent.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
it reminds me that God's grace is sufficient for us. And I think in this time and as a parent throughout, we have to remember that God's grace is with us.
yeah,
In 2 Corinthians 12:9, it talks about that. My grace is sufficient for you. And as I saw that artwork from James Brunt,
yeah.
and that slippery slope that we seem to be on, but yet being balanced in that kind of calm atmosphere with the support of others, it reminds me that God's grace is with us. So don't give up, parents.
No,
Don't give up.
no.
We are here to support you. And there is hope. There are
Yes.
resources available at the Family Life Commission and other NGOs. If you want to find out more information, in the chat on this whole issue on catholictt.org, there is that gender conversation. So we invite you to join that conversation and remember that we can make a difference in our children's lives. And it's time for us to continue or time for us to get involved. Thank you very much for viewing. Continue to like, share, and comment. And we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you, Alicia, for your wisdom.
Thank you, Trisha.
Thank you
Have a
very much
blessed day.
for being with us. And God bless all of you.